Hopefully not permanently gone, but.
Well, we won't be involved in the next landfill freight.
Live announcement, and it's 12:30 sharp. So welcome everyone to the March 14th meeting of the Winston-Salem County Utilities Commission. As you have heard, we are missing both Courtney Driver and Mike Stover. So we're in the capable hands of Jan, who I will turn it over to in just a few minutes. But Beth, would you please call the roll?
Yes, good afternoon. Chair Randall Tuttle.
Is present.
Vice Chair Wesley Curtis.
I am present.
Commissioner Harold Day.
Present.
Commissioner Harold Eustache.
Present.
Commissioner Tom Griffin.
Present.
Commissioner Yvonne Hines. I didn't see her. Does anybody see her? I didn't see her.
Have not.
Commissioner Hugh Jernigan.
Present.
Commissioner Dwayne Long. Commissioner Chris Parker.
Here.
Commissioner Charles Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Alan Younger.
Present.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you to all. Just one little procedural announcement before I turn it over to Jan is that Courtney and I spoke about a couple of things. And one, we have a busy agenda. It might not look like it. So when we get to the agenda items, we'll sort of ask for more of a summary approach to that and let us know if we have any questions. And then relative to meetings, we are still planning on virtual meetings through the end of April. So the upcoming budget meetings will be virtual, as well as our April meeting, and we'll assess the May meeting the appropriate time. Currently, I don't know if Aaron has any updates, but currently there is still a mask mandate for inside City Hall or any city buildings. And Courtney and I are thinking that we don't want to sit in the room together all masked. And so that's what's sort of guiding us in terms of coming back to in person. Aaron, I saw you came on. Any updates on that?
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair Tuttle and members of the commission. You're exactly right. I think we're in this position right now. We do still have a mask mandate within city-owned buildings that is still currently in effect. So I think amongst the various city boards and commissions, we're still kind of figuring this out. City Council had their first meeting in person last Monday. You do still have that option to have those meetings virtually. So if the commission prefers to do that, you can do that as long as the governor's order is still in place, which it is. At some point when that expires, then we will have to go back to meeting in person. But for now, you can still meet virtually if that's the pleasure of the board.
Yes, and I do want to give notice, sufficient notice to our both staff and commission members. So that's why I think we're going to go virtual through April, and then we'll figure it out. We'll give you plenty of notice before the end of April about our May, whatever the May meeting is. Thank you, Aaron. And Beth, I noticed 1 or 2 commission members joined, so if you could make note of that since we've already called the roll. Okay. And Jan, turning it over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, members of the commission, chairman. I'm going to share my screen so we can take a look at what we've got on the agenda today. Hopefully you're seeing the drying facility there.
Perfect.
There we go. So as Chairman Tuttle mentioned, we have a slightly shortened agenda today. We'll do a few brief announcements, excuse me. And we have a guest speaker to speak on the landfill project at Haynes Mill Road, landfill. We'll go through the agenda items. And lastly, we have a closed session to deal with an ongoing legal matter. So Chairman Tuttle already mentioned the virtual versus in-person meetings. May would be our target to go back in person. And these are the two budget meetings that he mentioned. One on the capital projects would be Tuesday, March 29th. And then Monday, April 25th, I think that is, for the operating budget meeting. So they'll both be virtual. In recent months, we've been updating you on department-wide vacancies and staff shortages that we've experienced. We are currently at 66 vacancies across our departments. So still a significant proportion of our staff of our positions are vacant. That number would compare to 74 vacancies last month and takes us back to about November, I think, when we had 65. So we're a little bit better off than we have been in the dead of the winter, but still significantly short-staffed. We've got 2 career fairs coming up that we're doing in conjunction with HR and the city itself. One at Parkland High School on March 16th, and on March 25th, there'll be one, I think at the fairgrounds, that will be citywide. So lastly, we wanted to mention Forsyth Creek Week, which is next week. It's a series of events related to environmental education, regarding our surface waters, the creeks, streams, and rivers here in North Carolina. So utility staff in particular is going to meet or have a session at Salem Lake Marina on the 23rd, which is a week from Wednesday. There'll be an informational session and a tour of the dam there at Salem Lake. So we hope for good weather for that facility. For that event. So unless there's questions about those announcements, I'll go ahead and introduce Mike Plummer. He's with HDR Engineering. He's the South Atlantic Solid Waste Manager, professional engineer, and he's our project manager on this project at Haynes Landfill, where we are proposing to construct a mechanically stabilized earthen retaining wall. Emily Tucker on his team is also with him. So Mike, if you're ready, we'll go ahead and go into your presentation.
Yes, I'm ready. Thank you, Jan. Thank you for allowing me to present today. Today's kind of an ongoing update of the status of the options that the option we've chosen for the MSC wall at the Haynes Mill Road landfill. And we'll jump right into it. Okay, so this is the outline. First, I know that there are some members that maybe haven't been privy to the previous discussions, so we'll go through a quick landfill optimization options recap, how we got to the selection of the MSC wall option, the current status of the project, 2 things that we've been working on and proposed to work on, environmental justice report, and the franchise requirement. And then go through next steps and our anticipated project schedule. Okay, so to recap, Jan and her group have been diligently planning for many years on long-term future waste disposal options for the community. This includes not only Haynes, it also includes looking outside of Haynes. We've done GIS screening for the county to identify large tracts of land that would be suitable for a greenfield site. We've looked at current property that the city owns for development as well, specifically the Highway 311 site, which was originally identified as potential construction demolition debris. on whether or not it could be converted to MSW. And then looking at how to maximize the space at the Haynes landfill. In particular, with the Haynes landfill option, I think originally we identified something like 16 different options and developed kind of a matrix, a decision matrix on how to narrow that down to the more viable options, and very quickly got to MSC wall as one of the preferred options. And we will go to next. Thank you. So here you'll see an overview of Haynes. The area that's denoted in the solid orange line is the expansion side of the landfill. That was the one that was permitted back in the 2000 timeframe. And then you can see current landfill operations are in cells 1 through 5 that they've been constructed and are actively placing waste there. Future cells are 6 and 7. This whole area 1 through 7 comprises about a 90-acre landfill. The heavy green line, dashed green line, and the heavy magenta line represent the approximate location of the mechanically stabilized earthen wall. So that's where we'd be constructing the wall to expand the capacity of the landfill. And you can see we've got 2 different colors. That was because our thinking was we would construct the first part in green around what's actively being filled right now. And then the magenta would be constructed as the future cells 6 and 7 gets constructed. Next slide. So with this, as we said, we got pretty quickly to the MSC wall as the most viable option moving forward. You can see in the graph to the right, the 90 acres is the current permitted footprint. But in the site study that was originally done, the very first permitting step, we permitted 102 acres for landfill development. The reason it went from 102 to 90 was due to buffer requirements, things of that nature. With the addition of the MSC wall, it allows us to work in the areas that the access areas around the perimeter of the landfill without any lateral expansion. So in essence, we can shrink up the perimeter roadways and things of that nature to allow us to gain more volume in that 102 footprint acre and then not impinge upon the buffer requirements. And you can see in the cross section where that volume is really coming from. So you can see the small MSC wall allows us to fill a wedge of material against the active landfill. And that's where the volume is coming from. Based on the design that we've put forth, we're looking at generating a little over 2 million tons of additional waste, which equates to approximately a little under 7 years of additional capacity. So we think we can extend the life of the landfill to 2040. And then in terms of that comparison of all those options, one of the ways we were comparing them was on a cost per ton basis. We estimated in 2019 $16.7 million for the construction of the MSC wall. That equates to $8 per ton. Just for frame of reference, the Highway 311 option, there was a couple of options, but it ranged from $10 to $17 per ton. Of course, that included a lot of infrastructure, scale house, maintenance facilities, roadways that wouldn't be required, obviously, under this option because you've already got it at Haynes landfill. But so we felt like that was a pretty good return on investment, and that's how we got to the decision to move forward. One thing of note that this is this would be one of the first permitted MSE wall applications for solid waste in North Carolina. Next. But with that being said, we're not the first to do this in the solid waste application. You can see that many states have permitted MSE walls in solid waste applications. Pennsylvania alone has 20 projects. So while we're one of 2 applications into the state right now for North Carolina, we're not trotting new ground with this use of this technology. So, all right. So here's a photo, an example of the MSE wall that we are proposing. It's really a series of layers of geogrid, plastic with soil embedded in between. And you can see how vertical the wall is. That's what allows us to be able to gain height without broadening the base of the landfill. We can limit the impact laterally and gain the volume vertically. And the wall that we've proposed is for your facility is anywhere from 10 feet to 40 feet. So there is a significant amount of volume being gained from this. This particular picture shows what we would propose, which is for the exterior, which is to have a vegetative exterior. You might see like on roadways, things, you might see a concrete facade. We proposed the vegetative just so that we could visually inspect this wall and denote any areas that might have localized issues so that we can identify them early and address them early. I don't expect that there would be issues, but we'd prefer to see it as opposed to being hidden behind a concrete facade. So. Next.
Is there maintenance? Is there maintenance to that wall, to that vegetative?
Yes, there absolutely will be maintenance. Obviously, it's vegetation. You'll have to maintain the vegetation. We can go with species that require lower maintenance. But yes, and maintenance, landfills in themselves will have long-term maintenance. There's a 30-year post-closure care period that the Utility Commission would be responsible for.
Mike, I have a question too, Dwayne Long. You mentioned 10 to 40 year expansion of that. Is the 40 year a cap, or could it even go higher than that eventually?
You mean it was 10 to 40 feet high was the...
Right. It's 40 feet high, the cap.
It's not the top height of the landfill. We did maintain the original permitted height of the landfill. We felt like we didn't want to go into line of sight discussions. We thought that the 2 million yards was adequate return on the cost of the wall. And then, if we went higher with the landfill, we could go higher, but if we went higher, we would have to probably do visual studies. I do know that back in 2000, there was a lot of discussion on what the overall height of the landfill would be with the local community. So we felt it was best to not try to trod that ground again, since it might feel like we were going back on what we had proposed.
But from an engineering standpoint, the 40 feet is not a cap. It's just an arbitrary number.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
I got a question.
Sure.
How about backfilling this wall? Do they, any of them, which they're sort of new to, have any of them ever collapsed from weight from the backside, pushing them out?
Not from, there was one in South Carolina, and it wasn't necessarily from the weight. It was from improper management of the stormwater and the drainage behind the wall that caused instability. We obviously would address that and are very aware of that. Make sure we actually have tow drains behind it to help dissipate any moisture or any water that would build up. Okay. But from a stability standpoint, we have modeled, what failures might look like to make sure that we're not impacting Grassy Creek That was one of the requirements from DEQ, that we look at potential failure, how it would fail, what the worst case failure surface would look like, and it's very stable. So, and it's a good thing that you mentioned it. So where we've gotten to is we submitted the application to DEQ. Again, this being the first of its kind, we had some preliminary meetings with them to understand, what their concerns were, the viability of this in the application in North Carolina. We feel like they've been in general agreement with this. They have required more on the permitting side of the house. I'd say more to a construction level type degree for the engineering design up front, which is understandable. We did submit that initial application in December 2019. We got comments in April of 2020, and again, that's when they asked for basic construction level details. So we provided them with the 1,500-page response and design in September of 2020, and that is currently the ball is currently in their court for review. We believe we've addressed most of their engineering concerns. The thing that we are lacking to date is the local government approvals, which is the next steps for us to make sure that we're getting those local government approvals. The other thing is that the size of the expansion for this facility, since it's greater than 10% of the overall waste capacity, required us to do an environmental justice report, which we're actively doing that right now. Then local government side of the house, we are developing the internal communications plan. So how would we, address the public, inform the public about what we're doing and how we plan to do it. And also because this would be a significant change to the site plan that was approved back in the rezoning days, we'll have to resubmit our changes to the planning board and go through the zoning process. Next.
Hey, this is Chris. Mike, are you foreseeing that we should have any issues with getting it rezoned?
I don't foresee any issues. I will say we've been, talking internally about, what their concerns might be. I think we can address any concern that they have. So I don't see any significant issues.
And when are you projecting that would come before that process, before the planning board?
Well, we hope to be able to submit pretty soon. I'll get in the schedule a little bit later, and that might help answer that question. If I don't, then feel free to ask it again, by all means. So as I mentioned before, the increase of capacity by more than 10% triggers the need for the environmental justice report. And this report basically has several criteria that we're reviewing it for: age, poverty, English speaking population, income, disability. All of those have certain criteria that when compared to the county and the state values or averages, if we exceed those thresholds, then it's deemed a notable environmental justice presence. And we also are looking at other things as well that don't necessarily have the same thresholds, but are important to evaluate, like health, diabetes numbers, cancer, heart disease, as well, comparing the community area to the county and the state levels. Looking for sensitive receptors that might be schools, churches, healthcare facilities in the area that you might want to communicate directly with. And then any other local permitted, like solid waste sites, or and that could be USTs. It could be small or large hazardous waste generators. Just what other potential environmental impact areas are there out there? And the way we've set this up is, so this DEQ has a guidance document and a screening tool that follows the EPA guidelines on how to implement the environmental justice analysis. That's what we've done. We talked to the state, and they were comfortable with a 1 mile radius from the landfill property buffer. So you'll see in red, that's your landfill property. The heavy dash black line is that 1 mile radius. And the different colored areas are census tracts. So we're pulling all the information from the census tracts, aggregating it into one number, and then comparing that to both the county and state levels for all of those elements. So as I mentioned, we pulled all that together. It's in review now. The objective is to get it finalized with Utility Commission's input, and then submit that to DEQ. And DEQ has their own review and public participation process that they will be implementing. So they'll take that information and say if non-English speaking were triggered, it might develop how they would advertise the expansion of the landfill. It really kind of tailor the message to those areas of interest.
Mike, this is Chris again. How long has this environmental justice report requirement been in place?
Well, there's been an environmental justice report step for a long time, but the state really has started to apply that to landfills and solid waste facilities in the past year and a half. They just went through a rules review and updated the rules and requirements. And so now they're requiring us to follow what's called the NEPA process when we trigger, to understand if we trigger an environmental presence.
So if I kind of help me understand the essence of this is DEQ is going to take this report, and as you said, they're going to help us to develop and implement a public participation plan. So it's not like they would look at this report and then all of a sudden say, oh no, you can't do this project.
That's correct. So yeah, this environmental justice wouldn't be the reason to deny the permit. It's more of an education to understand who's the impacted community. And really there's two communication plans that happen. The state's going to review and approve this environmental justice report and then implement their communication plan. And then locally, because we're going for local government approvals, we should be developing our communication plan and implementing that. And ideally, we'd like for them to dovetail at the same time so that the communities at large will hear the same message at the same time.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right, Jen, thank you. So the other major element of local government approval is the franchise requirement. So the general statute requires the landfills to obtain a franchise from the local government. Back in 2000, when we were permitting the expansion side of the landfill, we did get an ordinance granted from the city council to the utility commission for franchise, which expires in 2030. So the important thing to note about that is while this landfill expansion with the MSC wall is estimated to give the site life to 2040, even without doing the MSC wall, we think the landfill will last to 2034. So at some point, we would need to go through this process and get the franchise ordinance reestablished, because it does expire before the current capacity of the landfill. And then what this involves is just developing an application, providing notice of public hearing, and then we have to go through 2 city council meetings. The first one having the public hearing portion, and then the final ones where they would vote to approve it. Right. Any questions? Okay. All right. So in terms of next steps, again, on the DEQ side, we would finalize and submit the environmental justice report, and then they would develop their public participation plan. On the local government side, we submit the site plan amendment to the planning department to go through the planning process, and we'll finalize development and implement our local communications plan and the franchise application. So DEQ will continue to review the permit application, but they won't grant final approval until we get all the local government approval submitted to them, and then once that's done, we're free to develop the final design, bid the construction, and construct it. So in terms of project schedule, your current landfill, which is constructed of cells 1 through 5, we have estimated that filling will be complete in February of 2025. And that's really, it's a little bit subjective, but the way we got to February 2025 was we looked at your historical tonnages and your historical waste compaction. Now those two are subjective to change. Waste tonnages can go up or down with the economy. So, February 2025 is what we believe our best guess to be based on historical. So since 2005, since we've been filling in the expansion landfill, we took that number and we started to work backwards to develop this schedule. So you'll see the first 2 line items, environmental justice and the DEQ public participation, are really at the state level. And so we're saying we're giving the state from March of 2022 to October of 2022 to get through their portion of the review and permitting process. And then the next 3 are the local communications plan, the planning and zoning amendment, and a franchise amendment, all on the local side of the house. You can see we've got from March of 2022 to August of 2022 to get our local government approvals done. And that would allow us then to give them to DEQ. DEQ would have 90 days to finalize their review and issue the permit approval, so that we can move into final design, bidding, and construction. And you can see that we have occurring from July of 2022 to September of 2024. We do have a little bit of overlap between the state issuing the permit and us completing our design. But, once we get close to the end, I think we probably could feel confident to go ahead and start pulling together the package, proactively getting everything pulled together to be ready to bid and hit the ground running once that final permit comes in. And then we've built in 150 days at the end for contingency. And that contingency can be taken up a number of ways. Maybe we decide to push a meeting, public meeting, or, push one of the city council meetings a month. It could be taken up if the economy goes bonkers again, and we start driving up, we start disposing of a lot more waste. So really 150 days is not much in the terms of contingency. I will say that we have embedded throughout a little bit of contingency, but preferred not to not to use the 150 if at all possible. So what that says is we've got a lot to do in a very short period of time to do it. And that, yeah, I guess you could see based on approval from July 14, 2022 planning board meeting. So I don't, Chris, hopefully that gives you an idea of the ones that we're shooting for. That, I think that, is that the last slide? Yes, I'll take any questions. I know it's a lot to go through.
It is a lot of information. Does anyone have any questions about any of that?
Could you go back to the schedule slide, please, Jan?
Sure.
So what does that mean what does the schedule mean for the commission in terms of approvals and or the process that what will staff bring to us relative to the schedule in the next, say, 3 or 4 months?
The site plan amendment process will go to the planning board. We obviously would keep you informed of that every step of the way, but the planning board would approve that and then afterwards would go to city council. So you don't have to explicitly approve the site plan amendment for the local zoning. The franchise, now it's been obviously 22 years since we did a franchise agreement, but I believe that city council and the utility commission would need to adopt or approve the franchise. So at some point this year, we would bring you an item related to the franchise.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other thoughts on that?
Appreciate the presentation. That's looks to me like a really aggressive schedule.
It is, Hugh. Unfortunately, DEQ's taken their time in reviewing this, and I think it's because it is the first of its kind for them. But we've done everything I think we can to convince them that this is a safe and appropriate way to move forward.
Are we out of, this is Wesley, are we out of DEQ's, I guess, pipeline as far as in holding up anything else as far as reviews are concerned?
Well, unfortunately, they don't have explicit like deadlines for reviews. I believe, if we can get the environmental justice report finalized and in their hands, that's really the trigger for them to move forward, because that does have specific deadlines. They have, I think it's 90 days to review and then start to implement their public participation. And once they do that, then I think the rest of any technical review will come to the front burner for them.
Okay. Because, I mean, I agree, 5 months is that cushion can get going quickly. Those review times somehow start to string out. So,
yes, we've been living in that world. I think that's why the environmental justice is the thing that, will trigger the movement.
Sure.
Right.
Hey, Wesley, while I'm seeing you on the screen, since you're our planning board knowledge expert, are you seeing any issues from the planning board on this?
No, not that I'm aware of. I mean, go back to that. Go back to the schedule again. So the question I was going to ask is: Are there any issues as far as the public is concerned that they may raise regarding the franchise agreement? Is it just pretty straightforward?
I guess for those of us familiar with the facility, it does seem straightforward. It simply states the service area and the expected waste stream, the expected life, those kinds of things, and grants approval to operate within the governing jurisdiction. So it does seem straightforward to us.
Okay. Well, yeah. Since it's a kind of a public hearing kind of thing, I guess that was my question. Does it raise somebody else's antenna to, to drag it out or to cause an issue with it? But anyway, Mhm.
I guess that is a possibility.
Certainly.
My question is similar to Wesley's as it relates to public concerns. And you mentioned the term, and it was written in the presentation, environmental justice. I wonder if there have been, not just with Forsyth County, but if there have been instances of people who are very concerned about the growth of landfills in what is often a certain part of town that doesn't always provide the best services, if you will. Do we anticipate any of that?
Well, no, I mean, to be honest with you, while there are triggers on the environmental justice, I wouldn't deem them to be out of line with what I would expect. I mean, the city, the county, and the state pretty close to what we're seeing comparison wise. I think, to me, the things that are triggered just means we need to do a better job of communicating with those impacted individuals or communities, make sure that they understand that at the end of the day, and I truly believe this, we're trying to maximize the use of your resources and their tax-paying dollars. That by using the space that we already have permitted to the maximum effect serves the community at large the best. And that's really what we're proposing to do. We're not expanding outside of what was originally approved laterally. We're just finding a unique and creative way to go higher on the side slopes. We're not even in the top. So visually it would be, no different. And I think it's just a matter of communicating that. And again, I think maybe Chris asked, I don't believe that anything from the environmental justice would be a reason for the state to deny the expansion. I think we can show that we've done our due diligence to mitigate any potential environmental impact. And I will say that although an environmental assessment is not required for this project because we didn't meet the criteria, we still have looked at and can look at, are we impacting streams, wetlands, what would potential noise pollution be sound like, are there traffic impacts? I mean, I think in terms of when we go to the public meetings, we need to have all of that information in hand regardless whether it's required or not. And we do have that.
I appreciate your response. One of the things that I'll share, similar to Wesley, I spent 7 years on the planning board, and it's amazing how the public came and the comments were regardless of the fact that we provided all that information. So I guess what I'm getting at is, have there been other examples, whether it's in Forsyth County or not, where people protest any kind of development when it's related to landfills?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the city of Greensboro, they have a facility that the public was able to protest and close to MSW placement prior to them actually completing the landfill. And so they're sitting on a lot of unused space right now.
And Mike, I think it's a great case study. If off the top of your head, Jan may know this, what was their tipping fee pre that effect, that occurrence, and then afterwards? I know what it is afterwards. It's like $10 higher, but is that correct?
It is. Mike may know the exact numbers, but it's 40 some dollars at this point, and it was definitely down in the 30s prior to the closure of the landfill. That's true.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, their system was set up that disposal, all their funds were provided by I guess their economics were that the system, the collection system and everything was paid for from the private tipping fees that went into that facility. And then once they obviously closed that facility, then they had to levy fees or taxes to make up the difference.
Okay, good questions. Anything else for our guest here relative to the MSC Bowl?
Just thanks again. That was an excellent presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
All
Mike.
right, well done. Jan, shall we keep moving, please?
Okay, let's do. It's 1:15, so we can move to the agenda items. If I may, I'd like to briefly introduce the staff that's on the call.
Perfect.
Because they may be assisting in answering some of these questions. We've got Aaron King, Assistant City Manager, Beth Broom, the recording clerk, Patrice Glenn is also with us, Shang Joe Hoffman, our Utilities Capital Project Engineer, Frank Crump from the Wastewater Division is here, Bill Brewer, Water Treatment Manager, Gordon Dively, the Solid Waste Operations Manager, Ricky Rubio, Financial Analyst, Todd Lewis, our Plan Review Engineer, Marilena Jensen-Guthold, our Assistant City Attorney, Gail Kettler, our Public Information Officer, Matt Whitman and Allison Williamson with our Utilities IS Department, Tom Koreska, the Chief Information Officer, Kirk Bjorling, Real Estate Administrator, Zachary Taylor is with Business Inclusion, and Chantel McClam, our Purchasing Director, I believe is still with us. Kelly Latham is here from the Finance Department as well. So with that, we'll move on to the agenda items. Item number 1 is the approval of minutes. Item number 2 is consideration of a resolution authorizing execution of various agreements regarding proposed water and sewer improvements to be installed within various developments, and none of them have any refunds. Todd Lewis is here from our Plan Review Group if anyone has any questions on that item. Item number 3 is consideration of a resolution requesting that the City Council of the City of Winston-Salem authorize the sale of property to the North Carolina Department of Transportation related to the widening of Haynes Mill Road, with DOT project U2729. And I've got a map showing the location, the improvements to be taken, and the property is here in the yellow crosshatched area at the entrance to the landfill.
I'm just waiting for someone to say that we're getting that much money for less than half an acre. So, you know, just this actually seems to be, for once, a good deal from the DOT as opposed to the other way.
Randall, it's not as much as we got up there on Reedsville Road for that little pumping station.
That's true. But I was waiting for Harold to say something, actually. So he said the...
Item number 4 is consideration of a resolution authorizing acquisition of easements by deed or condemnation for phase 2 of the Peters Creek outfall replacement project. I think we have a map on that one, the red line being the outfall itself.
Yeah.
Any questions on that one? Item number 5 is a resolution authorizing the sole source system upgrade by Andritz Separation Incorporated for the biosolids drying facility. And as I mentioned, Frank Crump, I believe, is on the line if anybody has questions about that. Item number 6 is a resolution approving a change order to Core and Main LP. Do we have discussion, questions on that one?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about, this is Chris. I'm kind of curious about that, because it looks like we had the approval for that amount in August of 20, and we are in March of 22, and this item is from May of 21. I mean, I'm just looking at it, and the inflation adjustments that I'm seeing in here are pretty substantial. are we going to see a bigger jumps as more of these purchase orders come through?
And I would like to add my own question on that, and I mentioned this to Courtney, is through the pandemic, there have been a lot of cost increases from many vendors, and you know, this is 19-ish percent, 18%. So what's the theory? Is the theory that they don't have to honor it and we have to go back out to bid? Is this a strategy for us to think this is the best price, but still it's 18 or so percent increase?
It's a significant increase, yes. Chantel, are you still on the call? Do you want to speak to the?
I am here, Jan. I am here. Chair Tuttle and commissioners. It is our thought that, of course, a lot has happened since 2019, especially in relation to the cost of parts and for shipping. And that's why Core and Main were not able to honor the rates that they quoted us back in 2019. I'm hoping that this is not the norm. This is not what's going to continue to happen. They did state when they sent us the letter to increase these rates that hopefully by the end of the year that they would go down. If we do go and rebid for these products, we are under the impression that it will more than likely come back just as high or higher, because of where things stand right now in the world.
Until what kind of detail do they give you to give us confidence that material and freight costs, when they go down, they will lower their price back to the bidder price? In other words, is it fuel related or is it parts related?
I'm sorry, sir. Yeah, it is parts and it is shipping related. And the only thing that they basically gave us that they would honor a decrease is just their written documentation when they requested the increase. So in their written letter, they stated that if prices were to drop, that they would also take these costs off of us, and it would go down.
Thank you.
So as I look at this item here, it says that we issued the purchase order in May of 21, and we're in March right now of 22. I'm just not understanding why it's taken them so long to come back with this additional information and request for increase.
Well, the request came into us to increase it in November. And so I guess we as an organization were just grappling over whether or not we should accept the increase. I think the original purchase order back in May of 2021 did not include the higher prices. We were putting it on the more recent request.
Well, when we put that purchase order in May of 21, when do we expect to actually get those supplies delivered?
Now that question I can't answer. I would have to defer to those receiving the product. But it looks like when we issued the original purchase order, it was for the lower prices. Can anybody on the line assist with when we were expecting the shipping to come through?
Yes, this is Allison Williamson. I'm the project for the AMI project. We actually have already received many of the products. They come in randomly in groups of 1,000 here and 1,000 there. So we've received a good number of the products from the purchase order, but there are still some coming in, and actually they've delivered quite a few at the higher that they've invoiced us for at the higher cost, but we've not actually paid for those yet. So we've been waiting for this.
Thank you, Allison or Chantel. If I'm looking, this is part of a larger 4 or 5 year project. And are we committing to this price increase just for this one purchase order or for the whole project? Does that make sense? In other words, let's call it 18%. It's one thing to do it just for this roughly $1.2 million of work, but maybe not all for $4.6 million of work.
Right, we are doing it for the items that are the quantity and the items that are shown on this purchase order.
Okay. Other thoughts and questions from commission members? All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is what Randall. This is Wesley. This is a tough nut to crack, really. Unfortunately, I mean, this is a problem across the board, construction-wise, as you know. And the question is, with a contractor that typically has 90 days or so to honor a bid, he honors it and he orders his parts and he gets them. But now the cost of parts are changing monthly, and so what you don't want to do is, as she alluded to, is the contractor to default, and then you fussing and arguing about that because he just can't make the money to make it, or because if you go back out to bids again, you lose time and you lose more money because the price they're going to give you is a higher price and they got the same excuse. So it's a hard place we find ourselves, and we in writing contracts now are just trying to figure out how we can more effectively monitor and control that, I guess, to some degree, to try to be fair to everybody, or else you don't get bids. People just say, I can't take a risk because I just don't know what it's going to be. So it is I appreciate what the staff is going through and what you're trying to do in doing this. And Randall, to your point, hopefully this is the last time or the only time, at least for this scope of work, that we're going to get a change for parts because they're already in. So.
All right, well said. Thank you.
Randall, in our business, we've gone up 20% on our sales price, and we still can't make no money at that because our material price is going up, and Sherwin-Williams tells us we ain't got the price. We ain't got the materials for you. Find it somewhere else, you can't. So we got to keep these vendors in business to get money, but the next thing we're going to have to do in the utilities is go for the water bill to compensate for these prices. That's my
you're going to get your opportunity in about a month or so. So
okay.
All right, good discussion. Thank you, Allison and Chantel.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Item number 7, consideration of a resolution awarding a contract to CITI Incorporated to upgrade variable frequency drives at the PW Swan water treatment plant.
So we've got time here for all this agenda item, the next agenda item, for all those things that we don't understand, but we just nod our head for. So, no, we do have the expert in house.
Absolutely. Bill Brewer's ready to speak to that.
You know who we will, but when I just think of all these IT things that, who knew we needed to do work with Salesforce? The next one.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chairman Tuttle and members of the commission. Bill, do you want to speak to something from your business needs, or from an IT perspective? It's basically upgrading, hardware and technology, but Bill might want to add from his business need.
Well, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. For us, when these VFDs fail, they actually impact the process because they knock out banks of our flocculators. And it's also an opportunity. The VFDs that are there are original to the plant, so they're some of them are 20 years old, and we've replaced a couple over the years. But what we've run into is the way these things communicate back to the PLCs. It requires a little different programming and different wiring. So this will get everything on a consistent platform so that our instrument techs, when they look in one cabinet, they're seeing the exact same thing that they are in the next cabinet, is essentially what this will do for us.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks.
Item 8 is a resolution approving a contract renewal with Salesforce.com Incorporated for software licensing and support for the existing enterprise integration platform.
And Chairman Tuttle, I can make a few comments on that. You may recall back in 2019, we had some conversation. We came to the commission asking for the purchase of this product at the time called MuleSoft, which has since been purchased by Salesforce. And this was the integration platform we use to talk. We integrate our Kayenta billing system and our CityWorks work order and our geographical systems. And I can tell you to date, we have been using it. I can tell you to date, it's been used successfully. We have 10,000 meter installed as part of the AMI project. And this renewal is for 3 more years. The prices remain the same, no increase in the rates, no additional components. And it's for the licensing and hosting and support services of all the various components of what's this enterprise integration platform. And it's just a continuation of what we had purchased 3 years ago. Glad to answer.
Thanks, Tom.
So Tom, this is Chris. What I'm hearing you say is that last time we did this 3-year, it was for the same price of 1.432 million.
Yeah, well, the last time, but also we had some installation fees and consulting services. But yes, we came to you back in 2019. We did it actually in 2 phases. You know, the first phase was the initial installation, then the second phase was the AMI. So there was some consulting involved with the first go around 3 years ago. This is simply a renewal of the licenses and the hosting costs for hosting. They do host some of the data and the support license upgrades. So when I say the fees have remained flat, it's flat in terms of the software licensing and hosting. We're not paying for additional consulting or training at this time, which 3 years ago we were. So we're up and using it, and this is just a continuation of the user software.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, Tom. Jan, are we ready to begin discussion on these agenda items?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we, just a top overview, we're going to discuss and hopefully approve agenda items 1 through 8. And then Mr. Curtis, I will ask you to make a motion to go into closed session. We will not be talking about capital improvements today, just to save time for a closed session discussion. So would any of the members like to present a motion to either pull either of any of the agenda items 1 through 8 and or consider them via consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to consider them as consent agenda.
Mr. Long motions.
Second.
I'll second.
We have multiple seconds. At least I heard Mr. Parker. Any discussion on that motion and second? All right, hearing none. Ms. Broom, could we do a roll call vote, please?
Okay, Vice Chair Wesley Curtis,
Yes.
Commissioner Harold Day,
Yes.
Commissioner Harold Eustache,
Yes.
Commissioner Tom Griffin,
Yes.
Commissioner Yvonne Hines,
Yes.
Commissioner Hugh Jernigan,
Yes.
Commissioner Dwayne Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Chris Parker,
Affirmative.
Commissioner Charles Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Alan Younger.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, commission members, for the vote, and staff. Thank you, as always, for a job well done. Any other comments before I ask Mr. Curtis to present agenda item number 9 motion? Okay, and Wesley, did you get the email from Beth a few days ago about the substitute motion? You're muted, maybe.
Yes, I did. Hold on just a second.
Okay.
Okay. I guess I did. You ready?
Yes, sir.
I move that the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Utilities Commission go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3 to consider and give instruction to its attorneys regarding the handling of claims by MWH Constructors Incorporated and to preserve attorney-client privilege.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. This is
Mr. Jernigan seconds. Any discussion on the motion and second? All right, Ms. Broom, once again, please.
All right, Vice Chair Wesley Curtis,
Yes.
Commissioner Harold Day,
Yes.
Commissioner Harold Eustache,
Yes.
Commissioner Tom Griffin,
Yes.
Commissioner Yvonne Hines,
Yes.
Commissioner Hugh Jernigan,
Yes.
Commissioner Dwayne Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Chris Parker,
Yes.
Commissioner Charles Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Alan Younger.
Yes.
Thank
All
you.
right, so to those staff that are leaving us, thank you as always for a wonderful job for this wonderful organization. And Jan, if you could stop sharing your screen so we can get a
All right. Yeah, I guess I need a vote to go back into open session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Harold seconded. So I guess we need a vote call. Beth? You're on mute.
Vice Chair Wesley Curtis,
Yes.
Commissioner Harold Day,
Yes.
Commissioner Harold Eustache,
Yes.
Commissioner Tom Griffin, Commissioner Yvonne Hines, Commissioner Hugh Jernigan,
Yes.
Commissioner Dwayne Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Chris Parker,
Yes.
Commissioner Charles Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Alan Younger.
I don't think Alan's with us. So it looks like there's a motion for approval to come out of closed session. And at this point, I guess we're at the end of our meeting. So I will ask Mr. Day, if he would, to give us his popular vote.
I've been waiting a long time for this. I'd like to make a motion to go home.
I'll second it twice.
All right, good. Mr. Commissioner Long, second it. This, I guess, Beth, we're back for a vote again.
Okay, Vice Chair Wesley Curtis,
I think I can vote yes.
Commissioner Harold Day,
Yes.
Commissioner Harold Eustache,
Yes.
Commissioner Tom Griffin, Commissioner Yvonne Hines, Commissioner Hugh Jernigan,
Yes.
Commissioner Dwayne Long,
Yes.
Commissioner Chris Parker,
Agreed.
Commissioner Charles Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Alan Younger.
Yeah, he's not. Thank you very much. That's it looks like that's passed. So we are now adjourned. And again, Ken and all, thanks for your input and information, and everybody's been on the call. And we look forward to our next meeting. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everybody.